And then...
Was there a clicking sound? There's always a clicking sound.
Oh yes, it went click, click, click. And I knew before it even came up on the screen. It was a cyclic redundancy check and my hard drive was gone.
No!
Yes, all my save files gone.
No!
And it happened on a night like tonight, in this very room.
Find those chickens. Hello and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Badger, and in honour of our special late evening time slot this week, we thought we would get cosy and stock up on some snacks and settle in for a late session of gaming goodness.
And a great lineup of games we have this week. We'll be checking out an update of an old classic, Counter-Strike Global Offensive.
Plus Sly Stallone and his ragtag team of 80s action hero stereotypes in The Expendables 2.
He's mean, a real bad apple, and a skilled sniper.
That guy's a pretty good sniper. And Goose will be facing his fear of the dark and checking out the history of nighttime in games.
But first, can you guess the game for this week?
My, isn't this a cheery place?
All right, news time, Hex.
You gonna do it in your sleeping bag then? That's cool. I'll look after the snacks.
Good game.
Sony Computer Entertainment has closed down one of their high-profile studios, Sony Liverpool. Sony Liverpool was the longest-running studio in the United Kingdom, having started operation as Psygnosis in 1984. The studio was responsible for publishing the original Lemmings and creating the Wipeout and Destruction Derby series on PlayStation. Sony claimed the closure would allow them to focus investments on other projects and put the company in a stronger position to offer the best possible content to consumers. In more positive news, Black Isle, the studio responsible for creating classic RPGs such as Fallout 2, Planescape Torment, and Icewind Dale, has been reformed.
Do it. Do it now.
The studio was closed down by its publisher Interplay in 2003. However, a new website registered by Interplay boasts that Black Isle is back. Only 2 of the studio's previous employees are involved with the reformed studio, with most former staff now being currently employed at other studios. The CEO of Ubisoft, Yves Guillemot, has claimed that around 93 to 95% of users who play their PC games pirate them.
We've got enough pirates stinking the place out here.
The comment came during a discussion of the publisher's increased focus on free-to-play games for PC, noting that while only 5 to 7% of free-to-play gamers eventually pay any money, it is a similar percentage to those who purchase the standard retail games. Funcom, the developer of the Secret World MMO, has been forced to lay off almost half its staff. The layoffs, which affect their studios in Oslo, Beijing, Montreal, and Durham, come following poorer than expected sales and subscriptions to the game, with only 200,000 copies selling since launch. The studio says it will now focus on smaller projects with shorter development cycles and less upfront investments.
Gross. Hate licorice. Gross. Oh, thanks. Hot chocolate. Where are my marshmallows?
There were enough marshmallows for both of us.
But you've got heaps there.
Do you want one of these ones?
Ooh. The Expendables is all about the crusty 80s and 90s action heroes with bullets spraying, explosions surfing, and bad guy owning. And you'd think it would make the best recipe for a co-op shooter. And now, to tie in with the movie sequel, we have just that. This is not the same. Like jelly bean?
No. That's it. Arcade and dual-stick shooters can be a fun distraction, especially if they're well made and especially with friends. The first thing you notice about this game, however, is much like the 80s and 90s action heroes themselves, it's pretty rough around the edges. You begin by choosing from one of 4 expendables: Barney, Yin, Gunner, and Caesar, each with their own unique weapons and skill set, with basic upgrades as you level your character up.
The animations in the cutscenes are pretty awful, and Sly's sound-alike is a bit dopey.
Dopey, but would you say accurate?
He's mean, a real bad apple, and a skilled sniper.
Pretty good sniper.
Actually, it's pretty spot on.
Yeah. While you're waiting for the game to start, the character models march around like they have something shoved up their butts, but as soon as the level's loaded, it's crazy time. Like the films, little time is wasted on the plot, so you're thrown straight into the action.
You can switch between your two weapons to pelt bullets in the direction of swarming enemies, as well as pick up other random weapons which are scattered about each level. But Hex, I felt none of the guns were really doing any damage, and it was difficult to see where the bullets are going, so aiming with the right stick was vague.
Yeah, some of my favourite top-down shooters or dual-stick shooters have really overemphasized bullet animations so that you always know you're hitting your intended target, and the characters are so small on screen that I think you really need that. Here, you're kind of just squinting at the screen and hoping you're doing some decent damage. Even when using the RPG with a laser sight, it was so all over the place. I was like, is this rocket going where I need it to? I don't know.
Yeah, the only gun that's worth using is the shotgun, because you can actually see where that spread is hitting.
Shoot in any direction and you hit a body!
And playing as Sly, I generally found I'd be better off with the dual pistols I started with.
That's a nice weapon, but it's wasted on this guy.
That or just charging in and melee attacking my way through. However, this is better achieved when playing as Yin, as he has a set of knives that make his melee kills way more effective. If you go down, your AI teammates are pretty quick to come to your rescue, which is good, and when playing with friends, the more people who jump in on a heal, the quicker you get back up and into the action.
But those signature kills, Hex, they were very brutal. For a start, you're just mowing down waves and waves of shirtless goons, and then you zoom in for these really devastating kills.
Yeah, I mean, a small downloadable game is hardly going to go into the complex moral choices of something like Spec Ops, but it did feel a bit unnecessary.
I did like the way all the text appeared in and around the levels, though, giving you tips or indications of what you needed to do next. Occasionally, you'll be required to switch to a certain character to set off charges, or open a door while others covered your back. But these moments were few and far between, with most of your time spent in haphazard bullet spray.
Yeah, even worse were those helicopter missions, which just seem to drag on and on. You're just switching between a chain gun and a rocket launcher, attempting to mow down everything and anyone in your path, which often just ends really abruptly when you're thrown to a score screen.
Visually, it's not bad to look at. Some of the in-game animations are a little rough, though. There are 4 chapters to play through, and you'll spend most of your time in desert bunker and cargo environments. Helicopters and tanks will burst into areas, wave after wave of countless enemies will come pouring onto the screen with flamethrowers and RPGs as you scramble to complete an objective while keeping your teammates alive.
This one is still breathing.
I like that they put in a cover system, but I did find it a bit fiddly. There's just this rudimentary design to this game, which makes it feel like a rush job, and it probably was.
Yeah, plus things get really hectic on screen later on, which makes it even harder to see where you're aiming, especially when going for enemies on higher ground. But I don't know, despite that, I did enjoy the chaos a little bit. But all the levels just look and feel the same way to play through. There's just a real lack of imagination and thought in the way these areas have been constructed that might see you wanting to put the controller down pretty quickly.
I don't want to do anything you think is fun, Headcase.
Well, to be honest, we weren't expecting that much from Expendables 2, and it delivered on that, so I'm giving it 4 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, it's a few steps further in the wrong direction for movie tie-in games, so I'm giving it 3.
Right, now, nighttime in-games can offer a unique challenge for a developer, but it can also open up gameplay possibilities.
Yes, and they also give us something to fear, as Goose finds out. With it, oh, cheers. Oh, come on, that's so depressing. Just give me one.
No.
Just stop
Get
it.
stuff.
Just give me one.
Good game.
The foreboding atmosphere of night can be an extremely powerful trigger for some deep-seated irrational fears, because as we all know, when the sun goes down, our worst imaginings come to life. Suffering from acluophobia means having a pathological fear of the dark. Or more accurately, you're terrified of the dangers that you believe lurk within it. This heightened sense of anxiety is something that video games can very easily tease out of you. The very first video game to introduce a day-night cycle was Castlevania II: Simon's Quest on the NES in 1988. Under the veil of darkness, emboldened enemies became tougher to take down, and once welcoming townsfolk were replaced with famished zombies. Surviving through to dawn only took a few minutes, but it was always made to feel like sweet relief. Plenty of games include a day-night cycle, but most just use it as a technique of immersion. We can gaze up to admire a field of glittering stars in Skyrim, bask in the city lights and nightlife of Grand Theft Auto, or put our feet up over a warm campfire in Red Dead Redemption and listen to a tale or two.
The Mexicans roasted them alive, figuratively speaking. Red never forgot.
Atmosphere is a wonderful thing, but a more arresting use of Nightfall is when it goes from being atmospheric to absolutely deadly. Minecraft is a great example of how a game can use the threat of oncoming darkness as a constant source of tension. You need to spend your daylight hours wisely if you're to stand a chance in hell of surviving through the night, building your defences to keep out those spawning creepers and skellies. Terraria offers the same threat, with Nightfall bringing zombies and flying eyeballs if you're still hanging around on the surface when the sun goes down. And if we cast our minds back to Ocarina of Time on the N64, those bony denizens of the dead were a pretty good incentive to finding safety inside the walls of a town at night. The humble Game Boy Color also had its take on a day-night cycle with Pokemon Gold and Silver. While they wouldn't exactly try to eat you, those elusive nocturnal Pokemon could only be found when poking around at night. It was the game's own internal clock that was tracking the time of day you chose to play. Watching our game worlds transition to night and getting to experience the changes that take place really help us to believe in the reality of these fantastic worlds just that little bit more. Dragon's Dogma has a nighttime that brings with it a different set of challenges.
3 heads.
Maintaining a healthy supply of lanterns is vital if you want to avoid some truly frightening creatures that are otherwise concealed by the cloak of darkness. Some games exaggerate the dangers of Nightfall to a point where lingering just that moment too long can lead to a swift and gruesome demise. In Gears of War, you are faced with the consequences of being eviscerated by flying beasts called Krill, unless you fought them off with high-powered beams of light or stayed under the reassuring warmth of lamplight. Alan Wake was similarly terrifying if you left the safety of illumination. Your misshapen enemies would writhe in the beam of your flashlight as you battled to make it to the next fresh stash of batteries. Fighting the darkness was something we'd already seen in older games like Alone in the Dark, but the way the darkness closed in around you in Alan Wake and those scary sounds was all the more suffocating. In the dark, with our vision crippled, a game's sound is made all the more powerful and persuasive. It could be argued that the best use of nighttime in games is when it's neither purely atmospheric nor purely just a source of impending death. It's when games skirt that fine line that we find ourselves in a truly spellbinding place, never really knowing what we're going to get.
Hello?
One of the best examples is, of course, DayZ. It's a game or mod that makes the cover of Darkness a whole new survival experience. You can barely see your polygonal hands in front of you, but you're reminded you're not alone by the moaning and groaning of those ever-persistent zombies.
That's scary zombie.
You might be tempted to light a flare and bask in the safety of its glow until you realise you've just become a giant target that everyone can see. It can be tempting just to sit under a tree in the dark and rock back and forth, or even log off the server entirely. Stalker can be just as breathless. Like DayZ, you can barely see a thing, which raises the tension to an almost unbearable level. The likelihood of stumbling into trouble is always in the back of your mind as you try to make your way safely across the landscape, with only the misty light of the moon as your guide. These experiences really get the survival instinct kicking in. Enduring the sunless spaces of these games can feel a bit like flirting with permadeath.
such as the trepidation you'll feel with each step. But it's not all spooks in the Stygian abyss. Most stealth games place you in the dark to be helpful. It just makes good sense.
A great example is Thief. Keeping a careful watch to ensure you were never too illuminated was the only way to avoid the gaze of patrolling guards, pouncing from pool to pool of inky darkness, listening carefully for footsteps, and dousing torchlight to keep your environments murky was a genuine thrill.
Someone behind me?
That's not to say you didn't sometimes find yourself cowering away from something that was sharing the dark with you.
Even when using the black of night as an ally, it's still hard to shake some of those nagging fears that have hung around since childhood. Not being able to see what you're most fearful of only makes things worse. We all know how powerful and overactive imagination can be when it's allowed to take over.
Coming up after the break on Good Game Up Late, we set our sights on CSGO.
Hey guys and ladies, are you sitting there all by yourself? We have guys and girls waiting for your call to solve all your tech support problems.
Okay, was that 3 beeps? Because that sounds like your RAM's not seated properly.
Our girls and guys are ready to solve all your problems.
Sure, I can help you with that. Try unplugging your dongle and plugging it back in again. If that doesn't work, you've probably got a faulty dongle.
Talk with live girls and guys. Chat anytime.
Have you tried updating your drivers?
No, that's not.
One-on-one tech support.
The tower is the bit under the monitor.
What are you waiting for? A firmware update? Do it now.
Call us now.
Good game.
I hate to say it, Badger, but I'm getting kind of sleepy.
Yeah, me too. It's about this time I'd normally have my pre-sleep nap.
Oh, well, now would be the perfect time to crack out the Good Game energy drinks.
Oh yeah, Good Game energy drinks. Awesome. Oh, disgusting. Well, Counter-Strike is one of the most important shooters out there for what it has done for FPS and also what it's done for the competitive gaming scene.
Yes, but it's been long overdue for an update, which brings us to Counter-Strike Global Offensive.
Bajo, I just revenged you. I think you should feel so proud. I've been...
That's alright.
I'm sorry, guys, I'm stuck.
Where would I go? There's like fucking thing with nowhere else to go.
He just threw a flashbang! Oh, it's a decoy!
Oh god, it's just me.
Just stare at the walls. Oh, there's one! Oh, nice!
Is he teabagging the bomb?
Heck, there aren't many FPSs where I can sit down with the same guns and play on the same maps year after year and still laugh and scream until my throat goes raw, and Counter-Strike is one of those games. The clean-cut balance of the maps and the weapons inspire a fierce competitive streak within my body that unleashes in a sweat-filled fury onto my keyboard.
Yes, the highs when you're winning round after round.
Behind you. Oh, yes!
Oh my god!
Oh, what? It's amazing!
Oh my god, I'm amazing!
And the lows when you just can't climb up that scoreboard and you resort to blaming hacks or rego.
Only one person on our team has got a kill. Look, with that many characters and numbers and hashtags in his name. Hacks.
There's no way he could just be really good at Counter-Strike. You're saying he's using some hacks?
Totes hacks.
It's a roller coaster ride.
Being accused of hacking in Counter-Strike is the best compliment anyone can receive.
You're joking! I just got 2 of them!
And I shot you in the back, sorry about that, but now I have your P90, so it's all good.
Counter-Strike Global Offensive is a solid update of Counter-Strike, and they haven't changed too much, which was the biggest fear. In fact, it's more of an update of old-school Counter-Strike as opposed to an update of Source. Firstly, everything is more shiny, and the maps are much more detailed. There's motion blur and AA up the wazoo, and all the sound design has been wonderfully remastered, so they still sound like the old guns, but a much better version of them.
None of this will rival any modern COD or Battlefield shooter, but it's not trying to do that. The focus here is making it good enough for a nostalgic romp, but also good enough that competitive Counter-Strikers can move on to it.
And I think they will want to, Hex, because one of the biggest changes here is the physics system from Source. This is actually much closer to original Counter-Strike. You're not going to see barrels rolling about or cans on the ground. It's all rigid and fixed.
That guy's hurting. Have you got a grenade you can chuck down there?
You can still shoot the odd chair, though. I always thought CSS was a bit of a flashbang fest anyway.
I thought the controls didn't feel as floaty as old CS.
Yeah, that's all a bit tighter, I think. And I like the models too. Well, most of the models. I don't like the chef hats.
Well, the chef hats had some nice floppy physics though.
That is true.
I thought there was some nice detail overall, and I really liked the way the guns hang on the character models. Plus, some of the ragdoll is old school hilarious. I wouldn't call it a gory game, but there is quite a lot of realistic looking blood splatter, and some of those bottlenecks get pretty messy. I actually found that a little startling, Barjo.
Yeah, me too, but it's such a fast-paced game, you don't linger on too much for too long. I think the best thing they've done, though, is balanced all of the weapons. In older CS, you'd have 3 or 4 weapons that you'd use and probably nothing else, but here everything feels useful, whether it be the inaccurate power of the AK, or the weak but stable Bison Uzi. I had a lot of fun getting used to all of the guns' recoil and spreads and watching that reticle go in and out and working out the best way to use them.
While I'm happy that there's a heavier focus on chickens now, that is a higher density of chickens and their animations are better, I did find them a little bit distracting.
There?
Yep. That's a chicken!
You need to leave those chickens alone, Hex.
It's the way they explode in the puff of feathers. Wow.
Yes. Or just shoot like 1 bullet at the time, even. The chicken just scared the crap out of me.
I think the AI of the chickens could have been worked on a bit harder. I did see one walk into the flames.
Chicken just went into the fire.
All the menus, quick match, and server browser functions work really well. The menus in HUD have all had an overhaul too, and I like that you can see the icons of who's left in your team at the top and how much health they have. We have had a few sound distortion issues and mouse float bugs and a few crashes here and there, but they were generally pretty rare and usually a reload fixes them.
There's also plenty of custom servers, which is great. The matchmaking works fine, but if you want to have specific settings like friendly fire on but play collisions off, there are heaps of community servers out there for you to choose from.
There's already a zombie mod, which is pretty rough and also confusing, but it's a cool idea. I also like that while you're waiting for a server to fill up, bots can take up spots and then you can take control of them when you die.
I always feel a bit more reckless in a bot than my own skin. It's a bit sci-fi the way you leap into their brains and take control, isn't it? Assuming direct control. It's a huge nostalgic hit coming to this game, and that natural intuition of a Counter-Strike fight starts to sink in as you get into the rhythm of strafing unpredictably and taking short, controlled bursts at enemies, and I love the way that you start to think about all the objects around you. So if you're attacking one enemy and another one pops up, you just instinctively shift so that one's out of your line of sight, so you focus on one and then move on to the other. Ah, it took me back, Hex.
Oh, that fire almost got me.
I also like that catching someone by surprise isn't necessarily a guaranteed kill. I mean, they still have time to whip around and fire a few shots off. The new Molotovs open up a whole new range of strategy for Counter-Strike and are very useful in bottlenecks, although the effect isn't that pretty, which goes for grenades as well, actually. But it is seriously stressful when you get caught in the flames. There's also a taser, which is useless, but hilarious as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've got a taser kill yet. All the tweaks to the maps are welcome, and it takes a while to get used to them. The best one is in Dust, where the stalemate tunnel sniping fest can be broken by a new stairway that leads up to the middle section. The first time I played that map, I kept getting hit from the right and I couldn't work out why, and then I turned and there was a whole new entry there. All of these tweaks, though, they make the maps just go a bit faster and there's more opportunity for flanking, which is a good thing.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than, you know, a standoff while everyone else waits, or a dirty AFKer.
Yeah.
Along with the standard CS modes, there's also 2 new official ones. Arms Race, which is a gun game that gives you a new weapon with each kill. The final knife wins the match. I enjoy Arms Race way more than I thought I would, Barjo. There's something so stressful about, you know, a player being down to the knife trying to get that final kill.
Yeah, I like the sound that it makes when you've actually taken out an enemy, that bung sound that lets you know you don't need to reload a gun because you've got a brand new one. And then when you hit that shotty section, it's a shotgun, 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 you get a real rhythm going. The other official mode is Demolition, which is a mishmash of gun game and bomb defusal. If you take out an enemy, you'll progress to another gun in the next round, but you're also trying to plant a bomb at the same time or defuse one. I enjoyed all the demolition maps, especially the Tweets Classic ones, which made for a much faster game. But deep down, Hex, I still wish there was a whole new set of standard war maps. I just want more. I can't play Dust 2 forever.
Yeah, and you know, CS newcomers will have a rough ride getting used to no iron sights and this kind of burst fire style of play. I mean, you could argue that CSGO is pretty dated in many ways.
Yeah, I think you could, but also if they changed the gameplay too much, a lot of people would be upset. So it needs to kind of find that middle ground, I think.
Where'd you go?
One thing that hasn't changed is that you certainly still need a thick skin to play in public servers. It's a troll's paradise.
What's he?
That's not.
It's just
That's
rude.
not safe.
Teabagging
Right,
Bob,
man.
Just rude.
But we had a great time this week playing with the Good Game TV community. Thank you very much for everyone who joined us.
He's trying to shoot the nuclear bombs. Don't do it, man. You're a crazy man.
We did have a quick look at the console versions, and they're not a bad port.
Yeah, but I think CS's home will always be on the PC.
Yeah. Look, this is a pretty masterful update. It's not as visually amazing as I wanted it to be, but I'm kind of glad that it's also very much the same game. So I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I agree with you, Budge. I'm giving it 8 as well.
Careful. I think they planted a B. I think you're at the wrong bomb site.
Oh god.
Oh no!
No!
I know it is.
No!
This is not gonna happen. Good game.
So did you guess the game for this week? It was Interactive Adventure The Seventh Guest. Released in 1993, it was one of the first titles only available on CD-ROM. You worked your way up through a creepy mansion watching full-motion video cutscenes while trying to solve a variety of mysteries. At the time, Bill Gates said it was the new standard of interactive entertainment.
Well, we've been busy leveling up, so next week on the show we'll bring you our review of the sequel to the MMO Guild Wars, Guild Wars 2.
Nothing can break our spirit. Your faith is your weakness, human.
Plus, an emotional game which generated a bit of hype at E3 this year, Papa and Yo.
I don't know about you, Budge, but I was starting to hit the wall.
Yes, I've had a lot of coffee and sugar, and it's all crashing down, and I'm ready for dreams.
Yeah, I'm almost out of lollies. Let's call it a night.
Absolutely. I'll get the lights.
Well, thanks so much for staying up with us, guys, and tweeting along. Till next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Bajo out.
Are we really going to stay here all night?
Yep.
It's kind of scary in here. That weird baby thing is looking at me weird.
Shut up. Shut up. Shut up, Hex. Sleep time. Shut up.
It's a weird noise outside.
That's just Gary O'Brien.
Budge, there's a weird noise outside. I can't sleep.
Hey Hex, check this out. Check out this pillow.